On today's show, it is now May. There's a lot to discuss around the Atlanta Hawks. We're taking your mailbag questions, and we'll get into all of that right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1706 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening here on May 1st. In fact, today's show is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer, you get $150 in terms of dollars in bonus bets guaranteed. And the place to go is FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Also, want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, making sure first listen each and every day and check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you might find your podcast. That includes places like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube on the video side. It's been very busy in this space. It's the first show of this month, but it was very busy in April, even with the Hawks out of contention the last couple of weeks. I did a two-part episode with my friend Glenn Willis of the ATL 129 earlier this week to begin our annual player capsule series. Those are always must-listen episodes, if I do say so myself. Also, before that, I laid out the sort of 8 broad storylines from the offseason for the Hawks, as there's play to get into in the next couple of weeks. Also, I had fan favorite of the podcast, Tyler Jones, on the show last week for a 2-part show. So it's been already busy, and we are going to be here all the way through. Some podcasts might take a hiatus. This is not really what we do on this podcast. It's going to be full steam ahead all the way through the summer and into next season. Of course, it is May. In fact, the draft lottery is now this month. In fact, it's actually 11 days away. It's next Sunday. It's a little bit earlier than usual. It's not the same spot as usual, and that'll be a big day for the Hawks. Not questions about that today on the mailbag, but still, that's one to circle in just 11 days. But I do have a pile up of mailbag questions. In fact, I'm only going to get to a handful of these. I have lots more to get to. But always on these mailbag shows, and even beyond that, I will tell you to please send in your questions to me over various methods. You can find me on Twitter at BT Rowland. You can find me there as well for the show purposes at Locked On Hawks. You can send questions via email to lockedonhawks@gmail.com. And if you want to also leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, there's a spot to leave a question or comment. I will answer questions from there as well if you are inclined to do so. But today's show is going to be all mailbag driven and a couple of questions involving big names and trade stuff, etc. And the first one does just that. So, question from Be Kind, Stay Hydrated on Twitter, who says, I'm officially concerned now. Brian Windhorst was pushing the trade to LA thing hard this morning on Get Up on ESPN. The way he was pushing it seemed like he knew something was going on. Please talk me down that this is not a real possibility. Thank you for the question. I am not going to do Trey Young chatter every single episode, and I won't talk about DeJounte chatter every episode either. I know that everybody wants trade chatter all the time. I promise you there'll be plenty of that. There already has been. There will be more in the future, but it's a good time to sort of do this now. The Lakers were eliminated. I got a wave of questions about Trey in particular from Monday night to Tuesday to Wednesday because the Lakers were eliminated on Monday. The ESPN apparatus sprung into action. Wall-to-wall covers on the Lakers' next steps, and Trey has been tied to them for quite some time because, of course, everyone knows, or at least suspects, the Hawks might be moving on from one of their guards. DeJounte was rumored to go to LA at one point in February. The Lakers have the willingness and aptitude to make a big splash trade, and they're the Lakers. They always get attention. So all those things wrapped into one. So unless I missed something, and I don't believe that I did, no one has reported just yet that the Lakers are pushing for Trae Young. They've reported interest in the past, but all of this is kind of just speculation right now. That's always an important dividing line between speculation and actual rumors. As the question I'm currently answering laid out, Windhorst, who I enjoyed quite a bit at ESPN, did bring up Trey as one of a few different players the Lakers could be targeting this summer. If you watch the clip back, though, on Get Up, it wasn't like he was yelling about Trey wanting to go there or that the Lakers trying to get him, all this stuff. It was a pretty normal floating of ideas. In fact, later in this episode, I'm going to touch on a similar thing with Kevin Durant and the Hawks. That's also not a report, but it's interesting to kind of consider. But anyway, this is not the first time that national media or even local media have fed the beast a little bit about Trey and the Lakers. The Athletic has in the past, and they've actually reported, I think accurately, the Lakers do have interest in Trey. But why wouldn't they have interest in Trey is a question that's worth answering. Many photo shots have been made about Trey. Trey is a Clutch client, which only fed the beast even more. And while this is not actually what is the real situation, people seem to believe that anyone who signs with Clutch just becomes a Laker automatically, or that Rich Paul just sends people there. The question asked me, or I guess told me to tell him or her that this is not a real thing. I cannot come on this podcast and tell you that there's absolutely no chance of Trae being traded to the Lakers. I do not deal in absolutes unless I actually know absolutes. So I can't say it's a 0% chance. Now, do I think it's unlikely this summer? Yes. I think it's much more likely than not that the Hawks, keep Trae, and if they were to trade him, there are other places they can go besides the Lakers. The Lakers should absolutely call and try to get Trae, in my opinion. They've been in the market for point guard for a long time. Trae is an excellent player. They have assets to offer. You might remember, again, I referenced earlier, but the Lakers tried to get DeJounte, and I've told this story before on the podcast, but I got a call from somebody in February who I would describe as someone who knows things, and they told me to be ready to do an emergency podcast back in February about DeJounte. It didn't happen, but it got really close between the Hawks and the Lakers a couple different times about DeJounte. That could happen again. So it's not just Trae. It could be DJ, and the Lakers could also do something else. They want another guy. They want a third star, whether that's DeJounte, whether that's Trae, whether it's somebody else, et cetera. They want somebody else. And also, keep in mind, LeBron might be a free agent. So it might even be a number 2 star if LeBron ends up leaving. Anyway, maybe the Hawks feel differently now, but I can tell you that until they don't, I've never heard intel available that Trae is actually available in trade. That could change. I have not heard that to this point. Now, with that out of the way, I've said this already. I think it could change. For the first time in the entirety of his tenure in Atlanta, I believe there's a chance does not mean likely, a chance that he's traded this summer. Because there's a combination of, A, the Hawks might just decide to trade him, which I would not do, but they could just decide that. And, of course, there's always a chance, even if small, that Trae and his agents might go to the Hawks and ask out. That could also happen. I'm not reporting that it will or that it's likely. I'm saying it plausibly could happen for the purposes of this exercise. If he asked out, again, if he asked out, there's 2 things. Number 1, players on Trae's level, if they ask out and want to be traded, usually get to go to somewhere that they want to go. I understand there's always this perfect world scenario where I'll get replies. You probably did this podcast that say, look, if he's under contract, you can trade him wherever you want to. I understand that. In the NBA, the way the things actually work behind the scenes is that I could probably name 1 or 2 exceptions, but those are exceptions. Most of the time, when stars want to get traded, they may not get to pick one spot, but they usually get to pick a destination on some level that they at least sign off on, because no team wants to trade for a guy that doesn't want to be there. That's kind of the reality of the situation. Number 2, the Lakers do have logical appeal for Trae. Number 1, players have always wanted to go to Los Angeles. Not every player, but a lot of players like to go to Los Angeles. He has a place that he lives there. They don't have a point guard beyond D'Angelo Russell. All those things matter. They're factors, again, if this actually happens. People have asked what the Lakers could offer for Trae. It's similar to what we talked about a lot, I would say endlessly, for DeJounte back in January and February. They do have a little bit more to offer now. Number 1, they do not have great players to offer for either Trae or DeJounte. Austin Reeves is their best available player to be traded because AD won't be traded. LeBron's going to be a free agent if he wants to be. And Austin Reeves, while is a nice player, is, in my mind, pretty overrated at this point in time, and also not a great fit defensively with either Trae or DeJounte because he's not a great defender, but he is on a good contract. That's why he's appealing, is that he's on a very, very affordable contract, and he's a good player. Then you have Rui Hachimura, who I think is fine. It's not a great contract. It's just he's kind of like a rotational forward, not a disaster, but doesn't really move the needle for me. They have some cheap guys like Max Christie and Jalen Hood-Schifino. Those guys don't really have huge trade value for me. The big thing, though, with the Lakers is that starting with the draft this year, so if they wait till June, they can trade up to 3 first-round picks. If you listen to this podcast or follow anything back in the DeJounte talks, it was because they only could offer 2 picks, and they wanted to trade Russell and 2 picks. Well, now they can trade whatever they want to and 3 picks up to. Now, Russell could be a name that's out there. The Hawks didn't want him the last time from what I heard repeatedly. Anyway, it could be different for Trae. I think if it's Trae, you've got to get all 3 picks and anything that the Lakers can offer. Anyway, we'll get to that if we need to. But they do have an offer that I would say is a reasonable one. Not one that I like. In fact, if it's me, there is not a deal that the Lakers could offer that I would be excited about taking for Trey Young. If they want to offer 3 picks for DeJounte Murray, different conversation. 3 picks for Trae that are Lakers picks, yeah, it's a reasonable offer, not one that I would be excited about. So anyway, I would say to be prepared for lots of trade talk. Not really trade rumors, but just trade buzz and fans and Get Up and First Take and the Fox Sports shows talking about this stuff for the next X number of weeks because the Lakers are involved. Number 1, that's always part of this. They always get more attention, but Trae and DeJounte and everyone kind of knows the deal there. And yeah, it could quiet down a little bit if the Hawks make a declarative statement. But unless they do that and really try to actively do that, it's going to be a free-for-all for a while. And that's still, like, the draft is still 7 weeks away. Like, it's a long time from now. And that's kind of the first real pivot point in the offseason. So I wouldn't worry too much. I understand that it's frustrating because the Lakers stuff in particular, because it just never ends, seemingly. But I would just say hold on tight. I'll try to parse through what actually is a rumor and what is not a rumor. Right now, there are actually no rumors. What I would describe as a rumor is something that's actually being reported by a credible source. That's not really the case at this point in time. Right now, it's just like in the buzz, quote unquote, and the talk show stuff. I wouldn't worry until there's actual rumor and reporting on there. And if that happens, I'll report on it on this podcast. All right, so we'll have more questions coming up in a second. But first, a word from our friends at DoorDash. It's never too late to show your mom some love this Mother's Day with the folks at DoorDash. Surprise mom with good flowers or gadgets or self-care essentials all in one place, delivered right to her door. Does your mom happen to have a sweet tooth? Or is she a tech enthusiast? Is she a beauty connoisseur? Is she outdoorsy? No matter what she happens to be into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and much more. You can pair your flowers with an actual gift card. She can celebrate the way that she wants to. Or if she prefers something else, try a bookstore card or coffee shop gift card as well. You cannot go wrong with the folks at DoorDash. Get thoughtful gifts that she deserves with the convenience that you actually need. You can choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive at her door with the folks at DoorDash. Shop at savings that will make her proud, and with a Dash Pass membership, you can save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees, including service fee, apply. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on the next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That is code LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. As winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home the big win of your own. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and right now, if you're a new customer, get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 you can use to bet hoops and baseball and hockey and so much more. Bet on all of your favorite baseball and basketball players within teams, as well with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and much more. The app is really easy to use. They have everything you're looking for in the sports betting space, from over-unders to money lines to player props to future bets, game props, and much more. The app is also safe and it's secure. They cover the entire range of sports as well. They have the NBA, they have the NHL, they have football stuff, they have college baseball and MLB and golf and WNBA and tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and much more. And now is a tremendous time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook, and the place to go is FanDuel.com/lockedon. One more time, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shout count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, and we did one question before the first break. It might be the same for the middle one. We'll see how this goes. But a question from Kalen, who says, where do the Kevin Durant rumors come from, and are they real? Do the Hawks have an offer that would make sense for Phoenix? First, as I sort of teased earlier, these are not rumors right now. I don't want to be a stickler, but no one has reported anything on Kevin Durant and the Hawks. It was just buzz and talk, and I get it. And not everyone uses the same definitions, but for me, not a rumor just yet. But I think what the question is talking about, something I actually brought up on Twitter a little bit as well this week, coming off of an episode of the Low Post podcast over at ESPN with Zach Lowe, Bobby Marks, and they ran some potential teams that could be interesting for Kevin Durant. Again, potential teams. They were not reporting anything, but if the Suns chose to trade Kevin Durant, they were kind of floating some teams out there. It wasn't sourced. It wasn't a report. And as far as rumors are concerned, I would say there aren't rumors right now. But I'll stop here and just say this. People ask me also separately why the Suns would trade Durant. And basically it's because there isn't a whole lot else they can do. If they don't want to, just run it back basically, or at least make small tweaks on the margins, the Suns, and look, I don't cover them every day. You can follow Left on Suns for that, and my guy Brendan Clean, who hosts that podcast, but they are exceptionally expensive. And Bradley Beal is what I would say functionally untradeable, between him having a no trade clause and also being incredibly overpaid at this point in time. Devin Booker is the franchise guy there, while KD's had a better career than Devin Booker. Right now, Booker is younger and more entrenched in Phoenix. So there is some logic to, like, if Phoenix just wants to pivot right now and do what they can do, Durant might be the way to do that. I have no idea if they actually would even explore that. It just kind of makes some logical sense if they want to make a more broad change. But Zach Lowe brought up the Hawks and noted the package that is kind of common sense if you were to try to put together an offer for Durant as Atlanta. I would echo that. It would be one of the guards, either Trae or DeJounte, plus someone like Hunter or Capella, and then draft capital or whatever else. That's kind of the broad framework. Now, KD has 2 years left on his deal. He makes $51 million next year or so. You got to match salary on that. So Phoenix will probably ask for Trae. I would not trade Trae Young for Kevin Durant. Now, Kevin Durant is better than Trae Young, I think, still right now. Better career. But KD is going to be 36 next year. He signed for 2 more seasons. I wouldn't be trying to trade Trae for KD. I understand the talk about it. I'm not saying Trae's better because he's not, but he's a lot younger and he's under control for longer, all that stuff. That's a second argument we can make another time. But anyway, I'll answer the question about whether the Hawks have an offer for Durant by leaving Trae out of it, even though I'm sure Phoenix would prefer to have Trae because everybody would, I would imagine. Obviously, it's easier for the Hawks to build an attractive offer to Phoenix with Trae in it, but they can do it without Trae. I would say this. If you offered DeJounte Murray and DeAndre Hunter, that's about $47-ish million or so for next year. That works 2 for 1 with Durant. The Hawks could also offer Capella in place of Hunter if the Suns would prefer that. He's on an expiring contract, which might actually appeal to Phoenix. They have a center in Nurkic, but Hunter is signed for a long time. Not the best contract necessarily in the world. The Hawks could also trade some more stuff on the margin. So Atlanta can actually offer up to 3 first-round picks at the draft. That's the Kings pick, and then 2 of their own in 2029 and 2031. I'm not saying they should do that. I'm saying they could do that if they wanted to. Plus, they have young, cheap guys like Bufkin or Mo Gay or AJ Griffin or even someone like a Kongwu. They could use that. Again, not saying they should, but just that they absolutely can. The only guy that I would tell you that they're not going to trade is Jalen Johnson. That's just the reality of the situation. I would do a deeper dive on this if this actually came up in real rumors. So I'm not going to do like the full-on deep dive right now. But I would at least, if Durant was available, be in favor of checking in with Phoenix. Durant is old, yes, but he's still an all-NBA level player, top 15, 20 guy in the league. Even at his age, he's a fantastic, versatile piece. His shooting is dynamic. He's a good defender. He's long. I think he would fit beautifully with Trae, honestly, on offense. Plus, you have Jalen to be next to him to have that like athletic pop, maybe super long at forward with Durant and Jalen together. You could also, because you have those 3 guys together, you could go a little bit more defense heavy at the 2. Like, obviously, you have Bogey on the team still, but you could certainly go out and try to find a defense first starting level player to go along those guys, pair with them. There's more options when you have that kind of offensive trio with Trae, Durant, and Jalen. Again, I won't go too far on the line on this, but if you could turn DeJounte and either DeAndre or Clint plus like an asset or 2, the Kings pick or one of the picks from the future, into Durant, I would probably do that. I wouldn't go crazy, though. I wouldn't offer 3 picks. I wouldn't offer Kobe in 3 picks. I wouldn't offer crazy stuff like that. But if KD was 30 and not 36, offer whatever you want. Honestly, because KD is a top 15, 20 player of all time. Like, he's an incredible player. He's just 36 now. It's 2 years left in his deal. He's not quite the same guy as he used to be. He's still an awesome player. But that's why you have to be like more responsible, especially, not to bring it up, I'll just do it briefly, because the Hawks already kind of emptied the cupboard a little bit on the DeJounte trade. They are negative in trade capital when it comes to future picks. They overpaid in the DeJounte deal. That's going to bite them. It already is biting them on their flexibility, all that stuff. That's not an indictment of DeJounte, but it has not worked. That deal was designed to be really kind of short-term focused more than anything else. And the first 2 years were not very good. So anyway, they're out capital in the future. That makes you limited. What you don't want to become, honestly, the cautionary tale is Phoenix. Phoenix, while they've spent a lot more money than Tony Russell's ever going to spend on the Hawks, they just had a first-round exit in dire fashion, and they're really, really in trouble when it comes to like flexibility and future assets. They have 2 great players in Durant and Booker, a decent, pretty good player in Beal, and a couple other guys supporting guys. They're kind of like up a creek right now. And the Hawks, it's different where the Hawks are for sure, but Phoenix has a problem right now with their lack of flexibility. The Hawks still have some flexibility. They're not all into that degree, but they do have a limitation on what they can offer, what they should offer in any trade, especially for a guy who's older like Durant. And that would obviously be a win now move. I get it. And again, if this comes up again, I will talk about it in more detail than this, about his fit on offense and his fit on defense and the actual offers. But just broadly speaking, I got the question. It would make sense, but one more time, not a rumor just yet. And we'll see if it ever becomes one at this point. All right, we'll have more coming up on your mailbag questions. But first, a word from our friends at Monopoly Go. All right, we have to pause here, talk about the folks at Monopoly Go. And I know you're thinking about this, and I've talked about it a lot in recent days. You can listen to the show. There's just so much good stuff happening in Monopoly Go. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you can work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you can unlock with Monopoly Go. And there's so much to get as well. You can find and get unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. You can also get cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, or even hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash into their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting each and every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton of that includes their unique mini games like digging for treasures or a robot pachinko machine. It's always there when it comes to timed events. They help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you're looking for to win and rent frenzies. There's always something there fun that you can possibly discover at Monopoly Go, and get off the bench now. That's what I would say to you, and go download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. One more time, download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. It's game on with Monopoly Go. All right, I think we get to 2 more questions, at least on this podcast. And one comes from Julie, who says, I just finished the 2-part episode with Tyler, and he mentioned something that I actually noticed too. Hunter seemed really thriving and providing a nice spark for the team coming off the bench after his injury. I realized other things like salary and roster and available players would impact this, but would having him come off the bench be a viable option moving forward? So the short answer to this is yes. There is a chance, I believe, that he could come off the bench as a primary role next season. Now, as the question points out, though, there are lots of factors in play to sort of assess DeAndre Hunter. So let's look at this first. And by the way, as a disclaimer, I'm going to do a full-on, probably like hour-long deep dive capsule on Hunter with Glenn Willis. So I'm not going to get into like the player a ton right now, just kind of broad strokes, but just keep that in mind. But history-wise, he came off the bench 6 times total in his first 4 seasons. DeAndre Hunter was basically an entrenched starter from the moment he arrived as a top 5 pick in the draft. I think every one of those even was when him coming off of injury and kind of just being ramped up with limits on minutes. This year was similar in that he only came off the bench because he was on a very severe restriction for minutes. But when he got back to normal minutes, he stayed there for a little while longer. So like 5-6 games, he was playing 20 minutes a game or so. And then based on covering all of those games and the way that Quinn operates, I think he's kind of they were doing okay when he was coming off the bench, and he was playing pretty well. I think Quinn technically likes to kind of be like an if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of guy. So V was starting. It was going pretty well. And I think they kind of just left it there until something went wrong. And something went wrong eventually. Jalen got hurt on March 18th. They had no choice. They brought Hunter back as a starter. He was their only forward that was available for a while. And then he had to start and played, I believe it was 35 minutes a game in the next 11 or 12 games. So it was a brief stint for Hunter off the bench as a primary role, but it did happen. It would be fair to say he had better numbers in that small stretch coming off the bench. He played 20 games as a reserve this year. He had a 62% true shooting in about 26 minutes per game. So a smaller role, shot it better. He started 37 games. He played 31 and a half minutes a game in those games, 58% true shooting. So a decline in efficiency. Similar scoring numbers overall, a little bit better per minute off the bench. He actually rebounded better as a starter by the numbers. So like he was better, but it's not a big enough sample size for me to really take anything from that. It's notable, but nothing crazy. And what I would say is like, I'm not willing to attribute that he's quote unquote better off the bench yet. Was he better per minute? Yes, but it's a small sample size. Plus, I generally would care about lineup combinations and constructions more than I would about who's starting and who's not. I won't do my whole rant now, but if you're listening to the podcast for a long time, you'll know that I don't really care about starters as much as everybody else does. Generally speaking, it matters for league pedigree and all this stuff, but I think who closes the game, who plays more minutes matters than who starts. That's just me. With that said, a lot of what Hunter's role as a starter or reserve next year could be dictated by is like who else is on the team. For one thing, he may not be here. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but there's a chance for sure that he's traded. That's number one. Number two, Jalen Johnson is going to be one of the starting forwards for the Hawks next year if he is healthy. I'm really definitive, but I would say there's a 99.9% chance that Jalen Johnson is a starting forward on opening night if he is healthy. That's what I would say. So, in theory, there's another forward spot for him to start at, and Hunter would be in play for that spot. In play. Not the guy, in play. He's going into year 6. I would say this is a summary. He should not be written in pen to that job. To this point, he's always kind of been treated as a sacred cow. He's always been not necessarily gifted, but like he's been early in his career, he was gifted the spot. He was. Top 5 pick. I get it. Now, he's a starting caliber player for sure. But I don't think that Hunter is like the guy that you have to, in capital letters, start. At this very moment, on May 1st, he is one of their two best forwards under contract, along with Jalen Johnson. If the season began today and they only had this roster, he would start. That isn't to say, though, they should be treated that way as a defined starter. There's the money stuff. He's making starter money, about $21 million next year, but it's like 15% of the cap. So like he's being paid as like a fifth, maybe fourth starter. There are guys coming off the bench in the NBA who make similar money to DeAndre Hunter. So we're no longer at the point where like his money dictates he has to start, especially at a forward spot. If he was playing center, it's hard to have a $23 million backup center. But if you're on a forward spot and you can play, if you're the sixth man and seventh man, you're playing 30 minutes a game, that's plenty. So keep that in mind. You have guys off your bench that can handle that the rest of the roster a certain way. Like right now, I'll say that thought, but like they had so few forwards this year that he kind of had to play a huge role. You got Bay as a free agent. Beat Krejci's more of a pure wing than a forward, but he's a free agent. Like you could also make a splash move outside the organization with a trade. All that said, like I would say the short version of this is it will depend who else is there. I think that the only three guys, if they are on the team, that are guaranteed to start next year are Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, and Jalen Johnson. I'm not listing Clint Capella. I'm not listing DeAndre Hunter as guaranteed to start. Now, again, if they didn't make any outside changes, if they, against all odds, ran it back exactly the same as last year roster-wise, I would probably guess they would start DeAndre and Clint opening night. But there are three guys who were actually written in pen if they're on the team. Hunter's not one of them. So there's a chance for sure. And I think it would be reasonable if the Hawks could acquire a forward that's better than DeAndre Hunter, they should do it. And that makes Hunter go to the bench. Now he could be traded as part of that package, but I don't think it's crazy. And again, it's kind of the first time ever that I would say it's going into the season, I would entertain Hunter being on the team and not starting. Because most of the time it's been like, oh, he's going to start. I kind of know just reality. Not even my analysis, just the reality of the situation. I think now it might be a situation potentially where you bring in somebody else that he's not starting. We'll see. Last question, because I'm going to be out of time if I don't speed it up. This is actually going to be about the Atlanta Falcons briefly. I'm going to take this one. Look, it's the offseason. I don't usually do this, but thank you for listening to the podcast. If you want to log off now, I promise you no more Hawks talk on this podcast. Thank you for listening. I deeply appreciate it. Please subscribe to the show. I'll give you a disclaimer as well about this. I don't cover the Falcons regularly as a media member. I have covered them. I have been there credentialed for games before. I covered the NFL for some of my writing stuff. I am a Falcons fan. I am much more emotional about the Falcons than I would be about the Hawks or the Braves because I'm not covering them every day. Keep that in mind. All right. Question is from Steve, who says, are you as mad about the Michael Penix pick as everyone else is? All disclaimers apply. Okay. I will go long on this. It's going to be pretty short. I did have a negative reaction. My negative reaction is not really about Michael Penix or even the pick. It's the process of it all. Big picture. People, I'm obviously listening to this podcast. If you're a regular listener to the Hawk Show, you will know that I like process over results. I think that what you do matters. How you get there matters. Yeah, the results matter at the end of the day. But for me, it doesn't make logical sense when you look at the whole big picture of what the Falcons just did. For one thing, the Falcons, they probably tampered with Kirk Cousins. They're being investigated for that. The timeline doesn't really line up anyway. He didn't sign until March. Keep that in mind. That deal happened after the combine. So ostensibly, either the Falcons fell in love with Michael Penix after most of the draft process was over, or they signed Kirk Cousins to a massive $100+ million contract while they were already in love with Michael Penix. And they were planning to take him if they could. It would have made a little bit more sense to me if Penix had like shockingly fallen to number 8. If it was Caleb Williams or if it was even like Drake May, I would get it more because it's like, oh my God, we didn't know this guy's going to be available. We just love him that much. We got to take him. He's not viewed as a can't miss guy. I like Michael Penix. I should have said this earlier. I like Michael Penix. I enjoy watching him play quite a bit. He's got a cannon for an arm, but he was always going to be there at 8. He was. He wasn't and is not viewed as a can't miss player. A lot of people that are smarter than me as scouts had him as like a second round pick kind of guy, like maybe late first, but whatever. He's 24 years old. At least he will be soon. Tons of injuries. All that said, like, I get it. The Falcons had horrible, terrible, inexplicably terrible QB play for the last 2 years. And they're seemingly going all out to make sure that doesn't happen again. I understand that approach. It does make sense to me just for that. But the resources you have in the NFL are like finite. Like you having the part of the appeal, not all of it, part of the appeal of having a rookie quarterback in the modern NBA and the modern NFL is that they're really cheap for 4 years. And then you can kind of build around that. Like the Houston Texans right now, they have C.J. Stroud. They're now spending big money elsewhere because they can. The Falcons can't do that. They're paying a rookie quarterback to not play for them. They're actually spending huge money on quarterback. I can go down on this, but I promise you, it's not the player. I can see why they like Penix. I like Penix. He has a great arm. He was an awesome player at Washington. He might be good. I'm not anti-Penix. The thing for me here is that I'm not an NFL draft analyst. I will certainly acknowledge that. It's maybe a slight reach. I wouldn't worry that much about that. It just doesn't make sense to me because you can't really get out of the Cousins deal for at least 2 years. And even the third year is a big cap hit. And they obviously want to win now on some level. So in 3 or 4 years, I said this before on Twitter, just wrap it up. In 3 or 4 years, if Michael Penix is good and starting and good, people are not going to care about the process. And I understand that. I'll be the first. I'm saying it right now. No one's going to care. I get it. And how weird it was and how inexplicable it was and how the entire NFL, like, this does not mean that they're all right, but all the people that I follow, that I trust, that cover the NFL are all baffled by this. No matter who it is, like local, national, no one understands what the Falcons are doing. No one. And I'm in that camp. But if he's good in 3 years, no one's going to care. The Falcons are banking on that. If it doesn't work, it's going to look silly. I don't think anyone could convince me that the combination of signing Cousins to that deal in March and then using the 8th pick on Michael Penix in this draft is good process. No one can convince me of that. No one. But they did it. And if Cousins is really good, or if Penix is really good, or preferably both, because I'm a Falcons fan, that'd be great. And by the way, I would say the same thing about this process, even if I absolutely loved Penix. Insert whichever player you want to. I would say the same thing. The process doesn't make sense. Alas, here we are. And that will be the end of my 5 minutes on the Atlanta Falcons at the end of this podcast. Okay. Thank you for listening to the show. If you made it this far, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. But please subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. We're also on YouTube. And really the best thing you can do to support the show is to subscribe multiple times in multiple places and download multiple places. I know it's kind of a pain, but if you want to just, hey, how can I help this podcast? That's how you do it. Download multiple times, stream the show, 5-star ratings, shares, post the show on Twitter and send it to your friends and your family. That's all very much appreciated. Follow me on Twitter if you want to at BT Rowland. Follow the show at Locked On Hawks. Also send questions if you want to lockedonhawks@gmail.com. I also write about the Hawks and the Braves on a regular basis, I would say, at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Just a good way to support the rest of my Atlanta sports coverage beyond this podcast. And yeah, thanks for listening. Hopefully May is going to be a lot of intrigue on the Hawks. And again, the draft lottery is a big night for the Hawks. That's happening in 11 days. I'll have plenty of content between now and then. So, previews of that, more player capsules, some draft content is definitely coming very, very soon. Hopefully you will join us for the ride. I really appreciate you being here, and we'll see you all next time.